Hi, welcome. Um, Welcome to the seventh part of the agri-demand, agri-supply, and government intervention lecture of the um, Introduction to Economics course. Well, we were actually looking to the factors that cause a shift in short-run agri-supply curve. I have already talked on the wages and other major costs as a factor that is causing the shift in the agri-supply curve. But note that actually the agri-supply curve, the reason why it is of its positive slope was the case that as output increases, actually wages were increases, and that was actually increasing the price level. Uh, Basically, the companies need to charge at every output level. So wages was at the same time the reason of the slope of the supply curve. So basically, the wage change that is causing a shift in agri supply curve is not the one that is caused by the increase in the output or decrease in the unemployment level only. It is the type of change in wages that is caused by other factors. And one of those factors can be expected inflation rate, by the way. When expected inflation rate is higher, at each price level, the demand for wage change will get higher. As a result, as we know in case of the Phillips curve will shift up, and the short-run negative supply curve will shift in that case to the left, which means at each price level, less output will be uh, demanded, or for each output level, a higher price will be required. You can think of it in that way actually. If the price that you can get is less, in that case, well, the only way to get that price level is lower the wages. But how do you lower the wages? Well, you decrease output level because you cannot find enough customers at price P1, P2. But by lowering the output level, I mean, if this happens in the whole economy, will increase the unemployment level, decrease the price level, and in the end, you can come to the Y1, P1 point, basically. So the shifts caused by wages are the change in wages, which are caused by other factors than the income change, I mean, or the GDP level change. Now we can go to the overall picture, overall potential um, potential disturbances in this model. This is the equilibrium, and in this model can be taught as and basic Keynesian model can also be taught as uh, a model where disturbances in the economic system are external. They are not caused by the internal dynamics of the economic system, but rather outside effects are causing it. In case there can be an unexpected, irrational change in the investment level, but basically in the basic model, in this model, these are outside factors, and we don't know what caused that. I mean, the model itself is not actually connected to any factor. I mean, whatever is the cause, the dynamics of the model will be the same. And we will have basically four type of shocks here, but only three of them are studied in detail. Although briefly, I would also like to cover them. Fourth one, well, very basic. The long-run agri supply curve is always stable, which means short-run agri supply curve can increase. This is a positive supply shock and increase, positive movement. I mean, in the short-run agri supply. This is not studied one because it is not seen as a problem. Because usually, I mean, actually, deflation itself can be a problem, but if you have already sustained inflation, the constant inflation, which is for the case of the most countries, decrease in this stable inflation is not something bad. Which is actually at Nauru, remember, you have a constant inflation level. I mean, you don't have necessarily zero inflation always. And in today's world, most countries have positive inflation, not zero inflation. So basically, decrease in inflation rate and increase in output level, which is caused by shift in short-term aggregate supply curve, is something that is very much welcomed. So the second shock is decrease in the short-run aggregate supply curve. That's seen as something bad, causing decrease in the output level and increase in the price level, increase in the inflation rate, basically also that might be caused by it. The other types of shocks are increase in the aggregate demand level, which will increase the output level above the potential output, but this is not a permanent increase, basically, as we will see in a time, in a minute. However, this increase will, well, even in temporary, it has an unwanted side effect, which is actually increase in the inflation rate. The fourth possibility is the negative demand shock. This one was positive demand shock. Negative demand shock, which is basically decrease in the demand level, which will make the inflation rate decrease or cause maybe the inflation. But at the same time, usually it decreases inflation, so it is not seen as something bad, decrease in inflation caused by negative demand shock. But it will also decrease the output level below the potential. In a way, it creates recession, basically. So now let's see the basic dynamics that are basically that happens in case of supply shocks and demand shocks. Well, what happens in case of a positive and negative supply shock? Well, this is a negative supply shock, basically. So let me show you from internet a positive supply shock. Well, it took a little bit time to open the picture, but I have opened the picture. Basically, I mean, for the positive demand shock, you might think it like this. I mean, initially, the supply curve will shift right, which means because of the decrease in input prices one way or the other, it might be non-labor inputs or maybe expectations of the inflation rate has fallen. Basically, for each output level, the price level the suppliers in general would require will be smaller. So this will mean shift in the aggregate supply curve. Basically, as a result, the new short-run aggregate supply curve will intersect with aggregate demand curve at a point where price is lower and output is higher. If there was already positive inflation, this means a smaller inflation and higher output level, both of good in both sense. However, this won't basically, this is not a basically a case which will be sustained. Why? Because in the long run, the fact that you are producing higher than potential output will mean, well, there will be wage increases created by the labor because unemployment is below 0 now, which will basically, again, transform to the prices. Well, as a result, basically, well, just wages increase and this start to create some inflation, basically. Well, in the end, this will create an increase in the inflation level of the workers, basically, because each year, let's say, the workers will demand first they will demand a 4% increase, then they will demand another 4% increase, then they will demand another 4% increase. So this initial decrease in the price level will not be sustained. Decrease in the inflation level will not be sustained. In the end, you will have a continuous inflation at a certain level, which might be, for example, 4%. However, once you have that, in that case, expected inflation rate will change. For example, to 4%. Now the workers will demand 8% wage increase, which means now SRS curve will will shift right. For the same production level, the companies will demand even a higher price. So it will intersect with aggregate demand curve at a point with higher price level and lower output level. Well, as long as, however, the output level is higher than the potential output, and this means unemployment is lower than NAIRU, the expected inflation rate continues to rise more and more, which will shift short-term aggregate supply curve to left. In the end, we will return to the point where we have started, which is point A. So the price level and the output level will remain the same in the long run. So the initial decrease in inflation, decrease in prices, and the increase in the output level caused by a positive demand shock will only have a temporary effect. What about the other case? Well, negative demand shock. In that case, this is the case. Basically, I mean, increase in input prices level, for example, or sudden increase for any reason in the expected inflation rate. We shift the short-term aggregate supply curve. Now, for each output level, the companies are demanding more. So the new intersection between the short-term aggregate supply curve and the aggregate demand curve will be at a point with higher price level, which might basically increase inflation, and a lower output level, which means a higher unemployment rate. So this is worst of both worlds. I mean, you have an inflation increase in inflation at the same time. Increase in unemployment rate, depression basically. However, economic system will correct itself also in this case. How it will correct itself? Now you have an unemployment below NAIRU. Actually, the wages, actually the workers will accept net decrease in their buying power. As a result, I mean, the inflation rate will fall as expected, which will basically decrease the expected inflation rate. In the end, short-term aggregate supply curve will start to shift to the right. Because expected inflation will decrease the wage level, basically. The decrease in expected inflation rate will decrease the wage level, or at least change the wage level. So in the end, short-term aggregate supply curve will start to shift right and decrease the price level, at the same time increase the output level, up to the point where again the economy return to the old equilibrium point. So in case of supply shocks, the economic system always return to the old equilibrium point, because once short-term aggregate supply curve, even if it shifts initially to the right and left, in the long run it shifts back to its old position. And here we have seen the case. I mean, these cases are both cases where we start with zero expected inflation rate. That's why we start with actually a stable price level and return to a stable price level. But the same type of relation can also be shown. Instead of price level, you might have inflation rate here, and in that case, basically, we might see or increase in price level. Basically, in that case, we might see how economy returns to a point of stable inflation, not a fixed price level, basically. And if you want to see how these tables can be transformed into those type of tables, look how it is done in case of Phillips curve. But if you don't want to confuse, you might just assume we start with the fixed price level. Initially, we increase the price and then return to the old price level. But note that usually deflation in this case is seen not something bad, because it is assumed actually in reality we have already positive inflation. So effect of positive demand shock will only decrease the inflation, not create a deflation. So see you in the next part.